You've got a 4.8, 5.3, or a 6.0 in your daily driven pickup. So install the Torque cam. That's a good choice because they work well. The question now is, you want to add boost. Does that cam still work with a turbo? How many people besides me have changed their mind when they're doing a project? Heck, I change my mind before it even starts. There's so many good things to put in a motor when I'm building a combination. Should I use these heads or this camshaft or these intake? What if I did this? What if I did that? Pretty soon I'm overthinking the whole thing and it never gets done. But what happens if you change your mind like midstream, like in the middle of a project? Let me give you an example. Let's say you've got a daily driver like a truck and you think, you know what? I'm going to put a cam in this. Even though it has a 4L60E trans, I'm going to go with the cam upgrade. So you stick something mild in because it's a daily driver. So you put in a stage 1 cam, or in the case of our test motor, our 4.8 liter, a Torque cam from Brian Tooley Racing. I'm going to put the specs up right here. It's a good cam, especially on the little 4.8. It makes the 4.8 think it's a lot bigger than it really is. So you put the cam in, you're driving around, you're happy for a while, you know, all of us. After a while, we tend to get tired of that. We're thinking, you know what, this doesn't seem like it's making the same amount of power. I really need more power. What I really need now is a turbo. Everything needs a turbo. But even our daily driver, I'm just gonna run low boost, I'll put a turbo on, but the question now is, I already put the Torque cam in. I'm gonna put a turbo on. Do I need to change the cam? Well, if you've seen the other video that I did right here, saying that every cam is a turbo cam, the results might be predictable, but we're gonna run the test nonetheless. So here's the test. We've got a 4.8 liter on the dyno. I happen to have the Torque cam in it from a previous test, and now we're gonna add boost. To make things really interesting, I put the wrong combination together. So the 4.8 was equipped with the 706 heads, good. The Torque cam, excellent. It was already a 4.8, had forged pistons in it, but from a previous test, I had a Holley high ram intake on it. Now the Holley high ram is a good intake manifold and works well. Lots of guys use it, especially on turbo stuff. But for a 4.8, that high ram intake is like an 8,000 RPM intake. Unfortunately, we had a 5,000 RPM camshaft. Those two things don't really go together. To make things even worse, what I did was grab the most convenient turbo I had for the test, and I had a billet wheel S480 Borg-Warner turbo. Again, great turbo and it works well, but it's a little oversized for what I had in mind for this 4.8. It just happened to be convenient. I mean, this was a 1,200 horsepower turbo, and I wasn't gonna run any more than about 700 horsepower because once again, as before when I did the Big Bang deal, I was limited by a map sensor. In this case, it was only a 2-bar map sensor. That's what we had at the time. I couldn't find anything else. Sometimes you gotta get the test done. So I put the 2-bar map sensor on. I really didn't wanna run a ton of boost anyway, so it worked out just fine. So I had a 4.8, which is good. It had the Torque cam in it, which is good. It had the wrong intake manifold on it, at least for this combination, and it had a turbo that was probably too big for what I was trying to do. Let's find out what happened when we put all this together and ran boost on the Torque cam. Okay, we can take a look at, we've got our naturally aspirated 4.8 liter. This is the LR4 with the forged pistons, stock 706 heads. Got that high ram intake, allowing it to run the high RPM stuff there. And produced, this 4.8 liter produced peak power of 375 horsepower and 344 foot-pounds of torque. And again, the high ram, definitely a mismatch for this combination. I mean, that's an 8,000 RPM motor, and we had that Torque cam from Brian Tooley Racing, which is definitely not an 8,000 RPM cam. It's designed to enhance the low speed power, so definitely beneficial on this 4.8. For guys wondering, hey, how does this compare to, say, a stock 4.8? Unfortunately, I didn't run the Torque cam with the truck manifold, so we can kind of get an idea just what that cam did, but I did run it on a 5.3, and it picked up about between 35 and 40 horsepower on the 5.3. It managed to improve the power through the whole curve. Gains were not dramatic down low, down at 2,000 where everybody wants them to be, but it did pick up power, didn't lose anything, and picked up, you know, like I said, a pretty fair bit of power out on the top. But if we want to take a look at the comparison between this combination and a stock one, a stock 4.8 with the stock cam and the stock truck intake, we get this. So what we can see is, if you want, I can get rid of the torque curve. So, I mean, all of this area here in the middle in the 4,000 to 5,000 range, the stock stuff is going to make a lot more torque, and really none of that has anything to do with the camshaft. It has everything to do with that Holley high ram intake. It's just not designed to produce power in that RPM range, and the long runner truck manifold definitely is. So it's a much better combination, but all the power out here at the top, and let me get rid of the torque, so you probably can see that better. So if we take a look, so again, all this stuff in the middle, that's the high ram intake, not wanting to make torque down there because it's a short runner deal. And all this power on the top, that's really probably mostly the camshaft. I would be very surprised on a 4.8 if the high ram showed any power gains in this RPM range on a 4.8 compared to the truck manifold, because with a cam, the truck manifold will allow this 4.8 to rev certainly this high without any problem. So if there's a little bit there, it would be only at the very top. So that's a comparison between the stock motor and stock 4.8 and our modified version with the torque cam and the high ram intake. Now let's take a look and see what happens when we add boost to this equation. Now that we've taken a look at the NA power output and compared it to the stock one, we've got our 4.8 liter with the high ram and the torque cam from Brian Tooley Racing. Let's take a look and see what happened when we add our single turbo. Now remember, the single turbo was a billet wheel S480, and we had truck manifolds feeding a custom Y pipe with two TurboSmart Gen 5 Hypergate 45 wastegates controlling it. We had the Holley HP management system. I think on this one we were also using the TC1 electronic boost controller. So that thing's nice because it'll just provide a nice flat boost curve, which is good, which is we all want. Although I'd like to hook up the RPM capability on that so that I could produce a rising boost curve or a falling boost curve with RPM, which would also be kind of cool. But let's take a look and see what we did. First thing we did was add about 8 pounds of boost, and I mean, how do you not just love seeing a curve change like that? I mean, only forced induction does that stuff. Nitrous is nice because it gives a big jump too, but if you take a look at that, that's just not like more peak horsepower. In this case, it produced 581 horsepower and 541 foot-pounds, but even down here at 3,500, I mean, the boost is basically all in. 497, so it already had 500 foot-pounds of torque, 497 foot-pounds of torque. That's pretty awesome. I mean, and as you can see, if you look at the shapes of the curves, it's kind of the same, even though I'll bet the boost curve probably wasn't exactly the same everywhere. But if we look at the general shapes of the curve, like look at the torque curve, look at the revised torque curve of the turbo, look at the horsepower curve, that's what boost does. I mean, this obviously, Boost didn't have any problem with his torque cam, or vice versa. The torque cam works great. It provides that power curve even though we have the wrong intake on it. We put a turbo on, which is probably too big anyways, but here's what happens. I mean, boost is an awesome thing. So that was a little bit of boost, so now we're going to add a little bit more boost. So it went up like another 1.5 pounds, and hey look, it just adds power everywhere like turbos do. And that was like 9.5 pounds, so we're up near the up near 620 horsepower, 619 horsepower, and peak torque is at 577 foot-pounds of torque. So we went up again another couple pounds, 11.3, and again another big jump in power, 654 horsepower, and peak torque was 612 foot-pounds of torque. Look at that, it's just like the nice little railroad tracks that we always like to see when we're changing the boost. That means that the tune is right and that the wastegate controller is working right. I mean, this is all good stuff. But it just goes to show you, this is what the kind of thing that would happen. Imagine if you had the torque cam and a 4.8 and the truck manifold like you're supposed to and had this boost on it. All of this stuff would be shifted down. You'd start seeing even more torque. it would be a really nice combination for like a daily driver. And here we are at 13.3 pounds. Again, just started adding more boost. Easy deal. We're right under 700 horsepower, 692 horsepower. Torque was 646, 647 foot-pounds of torque. So that's what this does, and that's why I run multiple boost levels on this thing, because I wanted to show you that it's not a function of boost, or at different boost levels, different things happen. It doesn't. If the boost change is consistent all the way across, the shape of the curve stays the same, it makes peak power about the same spot, it makes peak torque about the same spot, which it did here. And we had more than enough turbo to supply this kind of power need. As a matter of fact, this is probably only about halfway there. But here's what happens. Doesn't matter what cam we put in this. If we put an LS9 cam in it, or an LS3, or the Comp 54-454-11 cam, whatever we put in here, whatever that new shape of the curve is, and we add boost to it, it's going to look like that. It's all just going to be higher, because that's how boost works. Okay guys, what did you think? What did you think about the combination of the torque cam and a turbo? Personally, I think it worked out fantastic. I think that torque cam is a great cam for the little 4A. Even when we saddle it with a 8,000 RPM high ram intake and a turbo that's probably too big for the application, I think the combination still worked out great. I mean, the power curve produced by that torque cam on the little 4A, when we added boost to it, it just elevated that curve. And if you take a look at that other video that I did where every cam is a turbo cam, that happens. It happens with a stock cam. If we were to run the stock cam in this combination, whatever curve that produced, we add boost to it, it just elevates that curve. Now when we change that curve by putting any cam in there, even this torque cam, whatever the shape of the new curve is, we add boost to that, it just elevates that curve. So our torque cam, the torque cam worked great under boost, it worked great on A, it worked great for the 4.8 liter. So that makes you think, what else could I put in there that would also work well? Well, the answer is almost anything. You put a stage 1 truck cam in there, put a stage 2 truck cam in there. You could put, you know, anybody's cam in there. It doesn't make any difference who made it. Whatever that does to the NA power curve, and you add boost to it, it's just going to elevate it. So remember that. And here's the reason a lot of guys don't get it, is because when they run a test, especially on a chassis dyno, which makes it very difficult, think about this. Are they going to run this? Are they going to do this kind of test? So you got to run your truck on the chassis dyno NA. Then you got to add your turbo kit and run it with a turbo kit with a stock cam. Then you got to take the turbo kit off, and then you got to change the cam and run it with the new cam NA. Then you got to put the turbo cam or the turbo stuff back on and then run it under boost at the same boost level they ran with the stock cam, so you can compare all of that. And nobody's going to do that. I mean, I'm the only guy that does that, and I do that on an engine dyno because it's a lot easier to do that on the engine dyno than it is in the car on a chassis dyno. So a lot of guys don't correlate the two. They don't correlate the difference in the power curve NA versus the difference in the power curve under boost. But guess what? It's the same. So the torque cam with a turbo definitely works. Almost any cam with a turbo also works. I'm Richard Holder, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure to tune in all that you can. Make sure to support the channel. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Do all that stuff. I'll keep making the crazy videos. Thanks for watching.